Hello, and welcome back to Alignment, a series on goals, habits, systems, and identity. So today is day 2. Yesterday, we talked about the silent killers of success. These thinking patterns that don't look dramatic, they don't crash your life overnight. They seem reasonable, they seem logical, and you justify them every day. However, they influence your decisions. So they look like delay, procrastination, comfort, stability, lowered sense of urgency, lowered standards. So yesterday we were talking about being aware of these things, and today we're going to move from awareness to examination. Because once you recognize these patterns that have been holding you back, the question now becomes, who was I being while these patterns were allowed to exist? So here is a foundational truth that we're building on today. Results are random. Reaching your goals and becoming the best version of yourself isn't just a matter of effort. It's not just a matter of discipline. They are the outcome of identity and standards. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. As you know, your girl has been reading a lot of books, and one of them is Atomic Habits. I know you guys are probably tired of seeing videos about me reading that book, but in that book, James Clear says, every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. And what that means is your year didn't just produce results. It revealed who was showing up consistently. So it's not just about the output of your actions, it's also about who you've become by performing these actions. So again, I know you're probably like, this thing is about goals. This series is about goals. Where are we going to talk about goals? Today is still not the day that we start talking about these goals. Not yet. Not yet. Hold your horses. We're going to get there. Today we are making an assessment, an honest and thorough assessment of 2025 and the years before if you want to. But for me, it's 2025. So what has transpired over the past 12 months, and how has that shaped who you have become today? That's what we're going to do. Because as you study the patterns that have shaped the person you've become, you then understand what it is you need to leave in the past and what it is you need to bring forward. And before we go any further, this matters. This is not a self-criticism exercise. It's not about beating yourself up. This is self-study, self-examination, which is crucial to becoming who you want to become. So it's not about regret spirals. It's not about reminding yourself of everything you've done wrong, everything you didn't accomplish. No, that's not what this exercise is about. Because remember, yesterday we talked about what you tell yourself, the narrative, the voice inside your head. So we are not beating ourselves up and we are not criticizing ourselves, but we are examining ourselves and studying ourselves and mastering ourselves, more importantly. Instead of seeing it as a way to replay your mistakes or your shortcomings, think about it as a way to get clarity, because clarity is important to moving forward. If you don't know, I am a data professional. I work in the data field, so I measure and count and keep track of a lot of things in my life. I'm not saying you need to do the same thing, but I take the words of Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets managed. So if you want to manage an aspect of your life, it's very important that you start measuring it. So that's why we're doing this assessment, so we can have a sense of what it is we're dealing with. Okay? All right, still with me? All right, let's move on. So what we're going to do is I want to label it an identity audit. It's not a comprehensive audit of yourself and everything you are and everything you want to become, but it's a little exercise. I think I want to call it an identity examination exercise. So an identity audit. So let's start here. Identity. Not with goals, not with outcomes, but with identity. Ask yourself, who did I consistently show up as for myself and for others? What version of myself did my daily choices reinforce? When things got uncomfortable, how did I react? Who did I default to becoming? What showed up about me when motivation disappeared? Now, here's why these questions are important, because they don't reveal who you want to be. Instead of doing like everybody else and asking yourself, okay, what are my goals for this year? What worked? What didn't work? We first need to assess, who was I and who am I becoming? Who was I in the past? How does that translate to who I am today? And who do I want to become? That's the path we want to go on. That's the exercise that we want to do. So this starts with answering some of these questions. I've given you 4. You can add some more if you want. Now, here's why these questions matter, because they don't reveal who you want to become. They reveal who you were under pressure, the real you, the you that's not prepared, the you that doesn't have everything you need, the you that acts under pressure, the you that acts under the pressure of life simply happening. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will drive your life and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will drive your life and you will call it fate. Can you sit down and think about all the things that have happened to you, all the things that you believe about yourself that you consider to be your fate, all the things that your parents did that you consider to be a part of your fate, that give you the impression that that's what your life is supposed to be? Basically, what you're not aware of, what you're not conscious of, will direct your life. And you won't know it because it will stay in your unconscious mind. So this is why we need to ask ourselves these questions, so that we can bring out the unconscious things that we do, conscious patterns that we have, unconscious things that we believe and think about ourselves, and the things that have shaped us, so we know to be conscious of them moving forward. And this is where the first connection with the silent killers of success shows up. There's a reason why we started with that video. Go back and listen to it if you haven't. But this is where the first connection happens. Because every time you delayed a task, every time you said, I'll do it later, and then you didn't do it later, every time we lowered our standards, it wasn't just the action of doing it. We were reinforcing our identity. So every time you rationalized procrastination, you weren't just avoiding a task, you were becoming a procrastinator. So your identity either resisted these silent killers of success or quietly surrendered to them. And this is what we're doing. This is why this exercise is important, because as we examine how our lives have been shaped or how last year has taken place, we can then assess and determine how each silent killer has been actively shaping our identity. Once you see who you were becoming the whole time, the next layer is obvious. Standards. What we tolerated and protected. Did we lower our standards or did we raise them higher? Let's go through the questions. Let's go through the questions and you'll be able to answer for yourself. Did you lower your standards or did you raise them higher? The first thing we need to make clear about standards is that standards are not what you talk about. It's what you allow. Oh, well, maybe just this time. Why not? I don't usually do this, but sure, why not? That's what we're referring to. That's what we're talking about. Not what we claim to be our standards, but what we actually allow. So ask yourself, what did you tolerate this year that you knew you shouldn't have tolerated? Where did you lower the bar when you promised yourself that you would never lower the bar again? And you would know, because after the action or after you performed the action or after you said what you said or after you did what you did, there is this thing inside of you that reminds you, I thought we said this was the last time. I thought we said that we weren't going to do that again. Yeah, that inner voice can be positive, actually. Yeah, there's going to be that thing inside you. And like no one has to tell you. You know where you lowered your standards and you know where you raised the bar. So another thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is one thing that I normalized that I knew wasn't aligned? What's that thing that you consider as normal today, but you know that's not your normal. You know that's not normal for you to do that. You know that's not normal for you to act that way. What's that thing? Write it down. And then, because standards can be lowered or raised, ask yourself, what is it that I did not compromise on? What is it that I didn't compromise on? What is it that I told myself I wasn't going to do and I actually didn't do it, regardless of who was in front of me, regardless of what life threw at me? No matter what happened, I didn't compromise on that thing. Write that down. The importance of these questions is that your standards determine your floor. A lot of times we think our standards determine our ceiling, but actually our standards determine our floor. Now again, linking it back to the silent killers of success. As you see, like success isn't just about becoming, a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Success is being successful with driving your life. So the link with the silent killers is that anytime something was tolerated that you knew should not be tolerated, a silent killer of success gained ground. However, anytime you didn't give in on a compromise, anytime a boundary was respected or enforced, a silent killer lost ground, lost power, lost their hold on you. And you'll know how much ground you've given in or how much ground you've taken back by looking at your standards. Where are your standards today for yourself, towards other people and towards yourself? Because our standards don't just apply to other people. They apply to ourselves, the promises we make ourselves, the things we tell ourselves we're going to do, and how much we respect ourselves by doing those things. Those are standards. Now, we've talked about identity, we've talked about standards, we talked about how the silent killers gain or lose ground in those areas. Now, the way they do so is through our decision making. There's nothing that's accomplished without us making a decision, making a choice, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. Some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves are, how did I choose when it mattered most? Where is it that I knew better, but I didn't do better? Where is it that I chose worse instead of choosing better? As I'm asking these questions, I'm thinking about the answers for my own life. And yeah. So another thing we should ask ourselves is, what patterns did I repeat knowingly? What patterns did I repeat knowing how negative they were for me? Did I repeat any positive patterns? What patterns were repeated despite good intentions? So what did I do consistently despite having different intentions? So what do my patterns tell me about my actions despite my intentions being good? Because the thing is, we justify having good intentions, but those are just intentions. And then because this is a nuanced exercise where we want to understand what worked and what didn't work, we also got to ask ourselves, what decisions did I make consistently that worked? And what decisions did I make consistently that didn't work? But I kept making them again and again. Although it didn't work, I didn't get the clue, but I kept making them. I hope you didn't do like me. Our lives are the accumulation of decisions made every day. I don't know what the number is today, but I believe that the average adult makes about 30,000 decisions a day. Can you imagine? In one day, you make about 30,000 decisions or more. I think it's more. But yeah, In a day, we make about 30,000 decisions, at least 30,000 decisions. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, in one day, you make 30,000 decisions. What does that look like in a year? That's a lot of decisions. And the thing about decisions is that they actually drive change. What you decide to do about your day, about your hours, about your month, drive the change that you want to see in your life, not intentions. And the mistake that we make is we think that big decisions matter more than the small ones. We think that it's the big decisions that shift the focus, or the big decisions that set us on a path towards an outcome. But actually, it's the accumulation of small decisions that make up the big decisions that then drive the change that we see in our lives. It's what you choose to do on a daily basis. It's how you choose to react on a daily basis. What you allow and what you don't allow on a daily basis. That's what drives change. And so when we skip a habit, when we hit the snooze button, when we repeat a mistake, well, it's not a mistake if it's repeated anymore. When we repeat things that we said we wouldn't do, when we postpone conversations, when we don't protect a boundary, we're actually weakening our resistance. And we're relying on intentions more than decisions. And we're not realizing how much small decisions have a greater impact, and decisions that compound, like interest. So you can make the smallest decision, but it compounds over time. So we talked about identity, standards, and decision making. We need to assess where we're at in each of those 3 areas, how we did last year, by answering these questions as honestly as possible. This is between you and God. It's between you and God. I'm not here. I'm not there. I'm just helping. I'm just giving you the questions. It's between you and God. So answer the questions honestly. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest. Be honest. Be brutally honest with yourself. Write it down so you can see it. So you can see what you did with your time. Yep. Write it down. When you lowered those standards, write it down. When you made those bad decisions that you know you made, write it down. Write everything down. Being honest with yourself is the greatest thing you can do for yourself, because from honesty, you can move to realization, and then you can make improvements. So be honest with yourself. Answer those questions. Be honest. Be brutally honest. Write them down. You got to write them down. Don't just think about them. Don't just meditate on these answers. Actually take the time to write them down. It makes a whole difference, so that you can look back at the end of this year and make sure that you didn't repeat the same mistakes, that you didn't repeat the same patterns. That's why writing it down is important. Now, this is the part that a lot of people skip. When we make these assessments of our years, we tend to focus on the negative. We tend to focus on what didn't work. We tend to focus on how we need to push forward. We need to make more efforts. We need to be more consistent. But before you start doing anything, sit down and do this. Think about what didn't die. We look at our failures. We look at our mistakes. We look at the things that didn't work. We look at the things we should have done better. But we forget to see the things that didn't die. The things that we sustained. Things that weren't easy to do, but we did them anyways. The things that stretched us so thin that we forgot we even existed. The things that challenged us to the core, but we still survived. We still made it. We made it to the finish line. We didn't make it cheering and running, but we made it. Even if we were crawling, we made it. That thing needs to be identified. We need to know what that thing is, because that thing reveals alignment. Think about what did not die, despite what life threw at you. What is it that you sustained? What was sustained throughout last year that didn't die? It is important that you know that. It's important that you identify that thing, because what survived matters just as much as what prospered. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself to determine what that thing is. I actually don't even think I need to give you questions. I think you know. Because you probably hurt so much. That thing probably challenged you so much that you don't even have to be like, I don't even have to ask you the question. You don't even have to think about it. You know what that thing is. You know how you were challenged. You know what hurt you so much. You know what transformed you so much. You know what hit you so hard that you had to get up and straighten up yourself. So I'm still going to give you the questions though. So ask yourself, what habits or commitments did I maintain? What didn't collapse despite everything, despite all that was thrown at you, despite everything that happened last year? What did not collapse? What's that thing that you actually did despite others telling you and showing you it ain't that serious? It's not that deep. You heard that before? It's not that deep. It is that deep. To me, it is that deep. What's that thing? What's that thing? Like, you know what that thing is. I don't even have to tell you. I don't even have to ask you this question. You already know. So let me move on to the next question, please. So the next question is, what's that thing that didn't collapse during your winter season when it was cold and you were out there trying to do what you had to do? What's that thing that didn't collapse when your integrity was in line? What is a thing that felt demanding but doable? A thing that stretched you thin, that you know it took God's grace for you to get through it? Was it waking up at 6 a.m. to take a train to get to work? Was it, but you still did it and you made the best of it? What's that thing that you did, although it should have been a burden, and you thought it was going to be a burden, but you actually transformed it into something positive? What is that thing that you made the most of? What are those ashes that you turned into beauty? Think about those things and remember them. And remember and remind yourself how you had the willpower to look at that thing that seemed like ashes, but you made beauty out of it. That is important. What did life require from you? What stretched you so thin that you thought you were going to break, but you actually didn't? You didn't break. You survived. You didn't die. You moved forward and you're here. What is that thing? What is it that stayed consistent about you, about your actions, about your identity, about your decision making? What is it that stayed consistent under pressure? Because when you look at what endured, you'll see something powerful. Those silent killers of success that we talked about yesterday, you beat some of those up. You threw some punches in there, and they felt it too. There are areas where you resisted. There are areas where you didn't procrastinate. There are areas where you didn't delay. The idea is always to say, I need to do better. I need to do this better. I need to work this way. I need to change this. I need to improve this. But did you sit down and think about what you didn't let die? Did you sit down and think about what you sustained? Sit down and think about how you brought beauty out of ashes, how you turned a hurtful, deep, conflicted moment into something beautiful, how you transformed pain into purpose. Think about these things. They are so important to know and to remind yourself of. Because when you look at all that you've endured and how you came out of that fire, refined, pure, like gold, something powerful comes out. There are rhythms and habits that you kept, that you stayed true to. There is a character that you stayed true to. There are standards that you stood firm on, that you didn't lower, that you actually raised. And all those things are not accidental. They reveal what you already are. They reveal where your core is already formed, and that is leverage. That is leverage. Another thing that's leverage are your wins. Your wins. Your wins are evidence of what is already working. Your wins are evidence of where you're already thriving. So there's a difference between what survived and your wins, between where you sustained and where you actually won. It's important to identify the areas where we thrived. So ask yourself, that thing that you started and completed, what is something that worked? What is something that you did successfully and you stayed consistent at it? Where did you show discipline, courage, and consistency? What is something that you're proud of? What is that thing that you did? Nobody can take it away from you. No matter what people say, you are proud of yourself because you know you did that thing, because you did it, because you accomplished it, and you're proud of yourself. What is that proud moment that you had? And then finally, when we think about life, we underestimate how much we will be surprised. We underestimate how much life can take its course and take a path that we did not anticipate. And that can be positive as much as it can be negative. So when things happen, we tend to focus on how life turned out the way we didn't want it to turn out, how life threw these challenges at us, how life was unfair, how this moment happened, how this hurt me. But rarely do we think about the ways that life surprises us positively. Those things that God does, and you're like, oh God, I see you looking out for me. That's like a wink from God. Sorry, I don't know how to wink, but I'm not good at winking. I don't know how people do it. Anyways, how did life surprise you in a positive way? How did life make you feel special? How did life make you feel like being on earth was the greatest thing ever? Because those things are important to know and to remember. So to sum it up, take the time to answer these questions honestly. Be brutally honest with yourself, because it's between you and God. No one will know unless you show them your answers. Write them down. Write them down. Write it down, because at the end of the year, you're going to look back at your answers to these questions. You're going to see how much improvement you've made. So write it down now. Write it down. Write it down. And then as you answer these questions, remember that you're not just reviewing your year. You're not just assessing how you did with your goals or what you accomplished. You are examining your identity. You are doing a self-study. You are doing a study of yourself. The answers to those questions will guide you, will tell you where have silent killers gained ground and where have they lost the battle against you. Where have they quietly shaped your decisions and where have you resisted? Where have they gained access and where have you shut the door completely? Because sometimes we shut the door, but we don't throw away the key. We keep it somewhere just in case. So throw away that key. And this is why day 1 was about awareness. And day 2 is about examination. Because you don't overcome silent killers, hidden patterns, by trying harder. You overcome them by becoming someone that they no longer have an influence on. By becoming someone that they no longer work on. By becoming the person that they can no longer defeat. Becoming the person who can identify them and call them out. So tomorrow we're going to continue and talk about raising standards intentionally, not through pressure, but through clarity, self-awareness, and self-respect. Your self-respect is a part of this, because the strongest reset doesn't happen by doing more. It starts with deciding this. This version of me no longer negotiates with what erodes my success. This version of me no longer negotiates with what erodes my life. The decision is yours. The decision is ours. I will see you tomorrow for day 3, raising standards intentionally.